Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 69 of the Canberra Football Show. Finals week to preliminary final time. Michael, some absolutely astounding results in all three competitions, NPL, NPLW, and CPL. A team that came third or fourth have made the grand final, so they ventured through the elimination final, won the preliminary final, and one of them ended up defeating league champions on their way there as well. Some absolutely incredible results. Some matches went to extra time, some went to penalties. This weekend had it all, didn't it?
It really did. It had every sort of entertaining component to finals football, didn't it, Matt? And like you said, it was pretty much the weekend of the underdog. All the teams that you on paper thought were going to get their way through to the final, fell at that hurdle, So it was the weekend of the underdog. All those sides that weren't favourites heading into it ended up coming through and making their way through to the final across the three leagues. And like you said, we had extra time drama, we had penalty shootouts and goals in abundance between the three games. So an absolutely cracking weekend. And I definitely didn't think it was going to be sort of as hectic as what sort of this past weekend proved to be. But I mean, as a neutral sort of football fan in Canberra, that's exactly what you would have wanted to pay your money to watch. And it was an amazing weekend of football. And, now obviously this coming weekend, we've got, the last final step of the season with grand final football. But I mean, this past weekend was, I can't even find enough words to describe, the just how entertaining all those games were across the three leagues. It was absolutely sensational. And, fortunately enough, we get to sort of talk about it, discuss it, and break it down together. So we kick things off, Matt, in the NPL, where the Monaro Panthers managed to defeat Gungahlin United 2-0. McLaren and Michael John on the score sheet for Monaro in this game. And in doing so, Matt, getting the victory in this match against Gungahlin United, Monaro secured their place in the grand final for the first time since 1999, I believe. So a near 23 years since the last time that they were sort of at this stage after, they defeated Gungahlin at Deakin Stadium this past weekend. So a little bit of history there for the Monaro Panthers. And I remember we had sort of discussed briefly on the last show that, that they were at such an important stage, obviously coming into this game, that, considering what they've sort of been through over the past few years, sort of pre-COVID, and, they were sort of near the bottom half of the table for a number of seasons, but they've really managed to turn things around. And now they find themselves back at the pinnacle in a grand final. So kudos to Monaro for getting themselves back into the big time. And, I won't get into it too much, but it sets up obviously a grand final showdown with Canberra, Croatia, who will obviously have the advantage of playing in front of their, home fans this weekend. But to kick things off in this encounter, Matt, the Panthers were off and running from the very beginning as McLaren absolutely laced his effort into the top corner of the goal to give Monaro the perfect start after only just a couple of minutes of play, Matt. So it sort of just showed how eager Monaro were to start that game on the front foot. And, it was a first decent save made by the goalkeeper, but it sort of just fell to McLaren. He took a nice turn in to open up his body. And like I said, he sort of just absolutely put his foot through the ball into the top corner of the net to give Monaro the lead. And sort of from that moment onwards at 1-0, both sides did go on to create sort of more chances, as obviously Monaro were looking to extend their lead. And then you had Gunners on the flip side of that, obviously hoping to try and get themselves on level terms. But it would be Monaro who would take that 1-0 advantage into the break after that goal in the second minute of play from McLaren. And a real dagger was a real dagger was placed in the Gungahlin United hearts sort of 4 minutes into the second half, Matt, as, former Gungahlin player Michael John produced a quality finish back across goal into the bottom corner of the net to make it 2-0. to Monaro, and you can see that he didn't really celebrate the goal too much because obviously of his respect playing against his former club. But nevertheless, it was a very tidy finish, and it's exactly what we've seen him do over numerous years in the NPL at this level. He's a very good finisher, and he highlighted it with that goal at such a critical time of the game to double Monaro's advantage. And obviously, not to the surprise of many, Gungahlin, tried stepping their foot down, and they tried to really get themselves back into it by creating opportunities, to give themselves a chance in this game to get themselves back in it. But nothing was just pulling off sort of for them in that final third. They just couldn't seem to get the ball in the back of the net. And I think Monaro sort of recognized having that 2-goal advantage they had. They used that to sort of just, eventually slowly sit off Gungahlin, in the second period there after going 2-0 up, and maybe just look to sort of hit Gungahlin on the break, given that, Gungahlin were getting forward, trying to, obviously, at one stage there, getting into a bit of a desperation mode because obviously of the situation that you're in, trying to get yourself back into the game. So you're going to obviously just get as many numbers forward as you can. And obviously that leaves you susceptible to the counterattack. So I think that's what we sort of witnessed there in the second half. But Monaro, they held on. They got the 2-0 win. Like I said, it's a monumental moment for them for the club and for its history as well. And I do want to say, though, well done to Gunners. They did have a good season. They, made this prelim final stage. And, for overall, I think they had a pretty good season. They had some really good results in there. They've obviously got a talented squad that we've talked about on numerous occasions on this show. And as for Monaro now, Matt, they've hit some really good form at just the right time in the finals. After I think, they sort of experienced a bit of dip in form just before sort of finals had kicked off. And I'm just not sure if that was obviously because they knew that they were going to finish in third position for sort of quite a while in the back end of the season. But, they've managed to flip the switch in finals, and they've been putting in some absolutely stellar performances. And, it's going to come down to the absolute wire against Canberra, Croatia in that final. And I know that I'm not just speaking for me, but for, all of Canberra football, that is going to be an incredible game that people are going to definitely want to get out to and watch.
Look, it certainly will. And congratulations to Monaro. Commiserations to Gunners. I completely agree with what you said. They've had a really good season. Obviously, they didn't get the objectives they would have liked, which, for someone like Gungahlin, the objectives would have been try and win the league, try and win the grand final, try and win the Fed/Oz Cup. But in saying that, though, they've still, like you said, they've still had a really good season. So well done on a good season, but commiserations as well. And Monaro, like you said, first final since '99, huge for the club. I'm sure the fans will be out in earnest there. Once again, though, I said the same thing last week. These last two performances have been the best defensive performances I've seen from Monaro this season. I'm sure some people might disagree there. Maybe they might think there were better ones at the start of the season. But considering how pivotal this was in the, where we were right now, I think these were the two strongest performances. Bernabeu Madrid had quite a few chances. Jordan Thurtell was absolutely terrific near the end of that half there. And naturally, if you're winning 2-0, the opposing team is going to have more chances than they did in the first, and they did. And I echo some of the comments that were made by Russ and Steve Forshaw as well. It was just one of those days. It wasn't going to be Bernabeu Madrid's day, considering how many chances he had that was saved by Thurtell in the end. And then there was a couple where there was one especially where he even beat the keeper, but it just didn't make it in. And it had to be Michael John, didn't it? I don't know how many times we've seen that this season where a former player just coming off that team that they just left has scored against their former club. We've seen it in all three of the leagues. We've seen it like numerous times this season. I know it happens a lot in Canberra football, but I think we've seen it more this season than we have in the last two. Maybe that's just because it's been a longer season, considering COVID. But yeah, look, that does set up an interesting final, though. Canberra, Croatia, Monaro, Panthers, Saturday, October 1st, 6 p.m. at Deakin Stadium. The results between these two sides this season: round 3, 0-0 Canberra, Croatia and Monaro. Round 10 was 1-0 to Canberra, Croatia. And round 17 was 2-2 draw between these. So Monaro haven't been able to get the edge this season in terms of the victory. But as you can see from these results, 2 draws and very, very close games. So I would assume Monaro will try and keep their defensive line as strong as it has been, try and counter with as much pace as possible. Croatia will start with the ball and a lot of the ball, so I'm sure it'll be up to Monaro to try and get a really good lead in and break as quick as they can, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a strong defensive line for Monaro. And if both teams are able to score early, maybe we'll see another goal festo. So this game opens up itself up to heaps and heaps of possibilities. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. So, Michael, do you have any thoughts on this final before we move on?
It's going to be a cracking final, and I definitely think it's going to be a tense final because, like you sort of just sounded off there, Matt, the results have been very, very close. And I mean, the only, victory in the 3 encounters that they've had this season was by Canberra, Croatia, but was only by 1-0. Yeah. So I think that sort of just indicates that, it's going to be a tense and tight affair.
But knowing what these final series has been like, that's why I sort of mentioned, even though I expect, tense and tight defensively from both sides, I can easily see it going the other way considering what we've seen, but we'll have to wait and see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There could be goals in abundance, or, on the other end of the spectrum, like I said, it could be a tight, intense affair, and there's only a single sort of goal that makes the difference between these two sides. But one thing you can assure is that both of these teams are going to give absolutely everything, and they've both had fantastic seasons up until this point, and it's going to be a great game of football down there at Deakin Stadium at 6 p.m.
And we are back with our NPLW segment for this preliminary final. Jeremy joins us again. It's been a while, Jeremy. Thanks for joining us. And what's with your Belconnen bias, mate, on the show? What's going on with the show?
Thanks for having me. It's I'm all Belconnen biased after what we've lived yesterday. It was a nice way to pay homage to that game that was pretty extraordinary yesterday afternoon at Riverside.
And we thought we couldn't get any more, like in terms of a finals match, we thought we couldn't get any more crazy than last week. And then we had this one. Actually, before we start, what do you think about last week's match between Olympic and Croatia? Because we didn't think it could be top, could we? And then this week happened.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at least this week there wasn't that much rain.
Yeah. Besides that, yes.
But it was amazing, and it was. I mean, I guess we almost say the same thing 2 weeks in a row, and I guess unfortunately for Canberra, Croatia, having the strength to come back, and then unfortunately seeing the other team still finding the resources to still win it. It's unbelievable. Like I don't remember any competition where it's been so crazy at the end of the season, like anything that I've ever watched in my football life. So it's pretty special, I think, to be involved and to be able to see that in our domestic competitions.
It certainly is, and great job to you and Russ as always on the commentary there. Let's get straight into it, shall we? Canberra, Croatia 4, Belconnen United 5 after extra time. Insane match at the Riverside between these two historical NPLW rivals. Belco stunned the reigning league champions with 3 goals in the opening 18 minutes. 13 minutes in, Kira Bobbin countered with her pace, running onto a ball from Paliwoda from deep to score the first. Bobbin broke, then crossed it in for Paliwoda, who worked herself into a free area and buried it for 2-0. 2 minutes later, the Blue Devils made it 3-0 after Kira Bobbin crossed it to Backhouse. Backhouse sort of nipped it up for Bomford, who beautifully struck it first time. Croatia, by this point, unfamiliar territory. Can't even think the last time that they were down 3-0 in the opening 18 minutes. Needed to dig deep if they were to make a comeback, but they did have time on their side considering it was 18 minutes in. Croatia struck back one in the first half through the penalty spot as Backhouse seemed to handball it and the ref called for that spot kick. Palombi stepped up to convert it to make it 3-1. Croatia made it 3-2 6 minutes into the second half as Fenson put in a big ball from in her own area. And into the box. It deflected off Carnegie into the path of Sienna Burney, who struck it first time for the finish. Croatia completed their comeback in the 75th minute with a goal that took them to extra time. Britt Palombi with a low cross, a cross goal, which was converted by substitute Sienna Burney. Croatia struck first in the extra time. 8 minutes into that first stanza of extra time, Jenny Bissett battled for the ball and won it and put it in the left corner. As it looked like Croatia had completed their comeback and were about to head into stoppage time with the lead, Belconnen United we're not going to go down without a fight. And Captain Talia Backhouse stepped up with a looming free kick over the wall, over the keeper's head and just under the crossbar to make it 4-4 and take it into stoppage time. A terrific goal there, as it looked like the contest was going to go to penalties. 90 seconds later, once again, the captain, Talia Backhouse, steps up big with a towering header from a Bomford cross at the near post to send Belconnen to the grand final. Heartbreak for Canberra, Croatia, to make that big comeback from 3-0 down to being within minutes of completing that comeback. It doesn't take away from their great season. Obviously, they were league champions, but unfortunately for them, on the day and last week, it wasn't meant to be for them. And their main goal of winning the grand final will not be possible this season. Stunning performance from Belco, first of all, to take that 3-goal lead, which we haven't seen in such a short span against Croatia. And then, to dig deep after losing that 3-goal lead, going down 4-3. Most teams would sort of drop their heads by that point, but not Belconnen. Congrats to Scott Conlon and his side for making that grand final. Great achievement. They will play Canberra Olympic now. Jeremy, I hope I did that with that description. I hope I did that game justice. What were your thoughts on it? Obviously, you were there commentating this one. You and Russ were pretty stunned. Overall, what did you think of the match?
Yeah, so much to discuss, right? It was an amazing game. The third goal for Canberra, Croatia was scored by Shania Sechin. It was stunning. I think, it was a game of momentums. The first 5 minutes, Canberra, Croatia seemed ready. They almost scored. They just inches away from scoring the first goal very early. And then Belconnen United starts going forward and find space wherever they go, counter-attack, direct football. And somehow Canberra, Croatia was a bit passive defensively on those opportunities. And Belconnen picked them up fresh. And that was great because when they played in Deakin, they scored at the 5th minute and then they waste a few opportunities. And this time there was no place for that. It's everybody would love to be up 3-0 so early into the game. You could argue that maybe it was too early to be up 3-0 against a team like Canberra, Croatia, because then you got 70 minutes of defending coming your way. And they did it heroically. I mean, I don't know how much we can talk about Sofia Dumos, but this was a performance for the ages, whether it was Grace Gill or Brittany Palombi or Bella Barach coming up. She was everywhere. And of course, the whole team was helping. But I think, we rarely see Grace Gill nullified that way and to the point of frustration sometimes. And I'm sure that, even Grace will recognize how great Sofia was on her man marking, but she was just behind her neck the whole time. Wherever Grace was going, Dumos was just behind. So it was a good performance from the youngster, Jala Murphy in goals as well. And Canberra, Croatia yet find the resources. They push. They're able to get there a bit similar like last week, right? It's an assist from Brittany Palombi from the left wing that offers the equalizer to Sechin just 10 minutes before full time. And then when comes extra time, you're seeing again the momentum, and it looks like it's all Canberra, Croatia. Belconnen looked tired. We said it a couple of times on the comms. I mean, we're almost, to be honest, we're almost burying Belconnen when we're commentating with Russ, saying that, it's a young team and they've done great, and maybe next year is their time, and maybe it's not their time right now, because we don't see them pushing up. We don't really see them pressing high, and we don't see them doing what it would usually take to try and get back into that game. Late changes are happening, and then it's all about talent. It's magical what we've witnessed. That free kick, it's hard to put it where she puts it, and it's just perfect. And for any keeper, it would have been almost impossible to get it. And then the very next corner kick, I mean, if you're Canberra, Croatia, you got to beat yourself up. It's the exact same goal you conceded at round 19. It's that corner kick comes onto the near post, and a Belconnen player is able to hit it in front of you when there's 3-4 Canberra, Croatia defenders. So it's it's tough for the team coached by Zoran Glavnic. It's hard to concede twice, of course, with minutes left. And just after the game, Nick Brosnich was texting me and was like, "Oh, I know what it feels to concede in the last minute." Obviously, the grand final in 2019, and it must be a terrible feeling. It could be the last game for a few of those very important players in that squad, and it's a tough one to finish. There was tears at the end. I couldn't even get myself to go and try and talk to the Canberra Croatia players because I feel like I would have cried with them because there was so much sadness with the way the game went. But for Belconnen United, I mean the noise they made in the locker room was probably heard all the way around Queanbeyan and even all the way to the capital. And they were stoked as they should be. They were underdogs this week. They're going to be underdog next week. They were underdogs almost the whole season, and they really went from strength to strength. It's a team that couldn't win against West Canberra early in the season, and now they've defeated Canberra Croatia twice, and they've shown how solid they are everywhere on the park. There's talent everywhere. There's experience going through, maturity shown by young players like Sofia Palivoda and Rally Ewan, who are all week in the National Youth Championship, and they're able to put on a shift like they did yesterday. It was just amazing, and it's great to be part of that. I mean, obviously, it's amazing to hear Russ calling those games because he definitely did them justice, and I was almost like spectating above the game and his commentary. But it was ready to be part of it. I think it's something special for this young team who supposedly was all turned upside down in the off season. Remember, you're losing Mickey Thornton, you lose Nicole Jaloka in the off season, two of your most important players, and you're wondering how you're going to step up. Well, Talia Backhouse stepped up all season. She's their leading goal scorer, and now she scored 2 goals when it matters the most. And like I said, the team looked tired, so she's almost done it on her own, which is something that needs to be saluted. Hard for Canberra Croatia, amazing for Belconnen.
Absolutely. I mean, what an absolute spectacle this game was. I mean, you couldn't really sort of keep up with, all the, the ups and downs that came sort of for both sides in terms of what they had to endure throughout the game, but it put together one of the best games that we've seen ever in NPLW history. So I think a great effort to both teams, and obviously a congratulations to Belconnen United for making it through to the grand final for NPLW. So that segues into Canberra Olympic up against Belconnen United Saturday, October 1st, 3 p.m. at Deakin Stadium. And just for a bit of further context, the results this season between the two sides, so they've met on 3 occasions. Round 3, Olympic won 3-2. The Federation Cup final, Olympic also won that encounter 2-1. And in round 10, there was a 1-1 draw between the sides. So Olympic haven't lost to Belconnen this season, and we'll just have to see if that's something that they can continue in the most vital game of the season. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on this final matchup? Necessarily, people will be a little bit surprised that maybe Canberra Croatia aren't in the final given how good they were all season, but it just goes to show, and it happens in finals football, from time to time, not always the best team, particularly in a knockout format, necessarily gets through, and that's what's happened on this occasion. But it's going to be an absolutely cracking game, isn't it, between Canberra Olympic and Belconnen United?
Yeah, undoubtedly. I mean, it's great. We were saying that yesterday with Russ offline. Most seasons recently we've had 2 teams really dominating, and then 2-3 teams in the mix for the finals. This season, 3 teams, even 4 teams with West Canberra were able to play that great football, and Belconnen, Olympic, and Croatia are probably leveled. Week in, week out, then it's a matter of who scores and who defends better, kind of thing. It plays on details most of the time. You've said it, how tight those results have been, how tight it's been between Croatia and Olympic as well, and between Croatia and Belconnen during the full season. So we're spoiled to have that much talent. Seeing the league champions not making it to the final is, of course, a bit of a surprise, but it's also full credit to how well the other teams have prepared for it. the reigning champions have won everything there is to win, and then the other teams have come with expectations and with knowing how to play them. We've said it during round 19. Belconnen United probably had found the recipe to beat Canberra, Croatia. They've done it again. Olympic had beaten Canberra, Croatia in the Federation Cup semi-final as well. So it's two teams that are deserving to be there the same way Croatia would have deserved to be there. The game is going to be it's definitely going to be a spectacle. And, we have some futsal world champions on one side with Miki Thornton and Nicole Zaloka coming back from Spain for that grand final. And on the other side, we have a young group of players who really want to prove that even if they're again coming in as the underdogs, they can get the result. Scott Conlon, before that semi-final of Federation Cup, was telling me that winning the league championship might be hard, but for the two other trophies, it just needs to be great for 180 minutes. And he's doing that right now, and he's only 90 minutes away from being able to lift a trophy. He's going to do everything he can to bring the trophy back to Belconnen. Anthony Jagorinec was at Riverside yesterday and was saying that he doesn't even remember himself ever scoring 3 goals so quickly against Canberra, Croatia. So he was saluting the performance that he was seeing. I'm sure he wants to see a bit more of that against Olympic this week. It's going to be different. Both teams are talented throughout the park. Olympic offensively offers a different kind of threats than what Canberra, Croatia is offering. So Belconnen is going to have to adapt to that. Belconnen United, we know what they can do, and they were able to score almost at every game, if I'm not mistaken, against Olympic. So they know how to get there. It's just going to be, I'm fairly certain, it's going to be a matter of details. It's going to be set pieces. It's going to be how quickly the teams are getting into the game, how long that round of observation lasts. Probably going to be cagey a little bit, but look, if it's anything like the games that we've seen in finals so far, there's no doubt it's going to be a cracking game.
Big match on the weekend. Jeremy, will you be any last words before we sign off? Will you be commentating on the weekend or anything like that?
Yeah, I'll be with Russ at 3 p.m. and at Deakin, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's great. It's too bad that it's the end of the season, right? Because there's so much amazing football, but it's so promising for next season in the WNPL, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to one great last weekend of football in the capital.
Hello, everybody. CPL time. Webby is back with us. Webby, how's it going today?
Yeah, pretty good. How you guys doing?
Doing good, thanks, Webby.
Not too bad. And as we chatted off air, heaps of crazy results and some dramatic finishes to matches, and CPL was no different. But before that, I have to get your thoughts. Do you want to make a comment about putting the kiss of death on ANU a couple of weeks ago? Or
Oh, look, I'd probably kiss of death a lot of teams this year. And no, exactly. I was surprised. As I said, they are finals football team, and they've proven it over the last kind of 8 or 9 years, but wasn't their time.
No, unfortunately for them, it wasn't their time, but it seems to have been Brindy's time. And a common theme throughout NPL, NPLW, and CPL, one of the teams that has had to go from the elimination stage through the preliminary rounds has made it. So a team that was 3rd or 4th in all 3 of the leagues has made the final. And like I said, CPL was no different in that regard. Brindis with another victory here. This one against Queanbeyan City, 1-1, and Brindis won 4-3 on penalties. Jordan Host opened the scoring for the Brindis 32 minutes into the tightly contested contest. Host, from just outside the box, struck a nice free kick for the left post. It seemed like there was a bit of a deflection when I was there watching it, but nonetheless, it was a well-struck free kick. Brindis had some really good chances throughout the game, had some really good spells of possession with the ball. One of the best ones that they didn't score was from Jamie Ward after a Blues break, but it was terrifically saved by the Queanbeyan keeper. Queanbeyan went close to an equaliser a few times. One specifically I remember was Michael Menza at one point with an incredible overhead kick. But in the 73rd minute, Menza was sent off with a red card. So despite that, though, Queanbeyan kept pushing forward to try, despite being a man down, to try and get that equaliser. And it was realised, dying seconds from the match being done in stoppage time, 96th minute of stoppage time. A cross was lobbed into the box. A header was sort of challenged for it. Two players were going for it there, and the ball seemed to bounce off the Brindis defender's arm there, so it was called as a handball. Referee blew for the spot kick, and Vasco Petrovski stepped up to convert the crucial penalty to take his side into extra time. Despite a tense extra time period for both sides, and of course Queanbeyan down to 10 men for that as well, the preliminary final was to be decided on penalties. And I think the best way to sort of sum this up is direct quote from the Capital Football article today. After Flissinger had stepped up first to score, Kusan Fureje saw his shot cannon back off the post, opening the door for Dagan Smith to seal progress. It was that kind of madcap afternoon, and I believe Russ would have been the one that wrote that. I thought that sort of summed it all up well. It ended 4-3 on penalties to the Brindis, and they go to the grand final. Heartbreak for Queanbeyan to lose on penalties, especially heartbreak considering that they fought back with 10 men to get that equalizer and to go to extra time and to sort of push forward, and both sides trying to get goals in that extra time, and obviously it going to penalties. Commiserations to Queanbeyan. I know obviously wasn't their ultimate goal of trying to get promoted, or their what I'm assuming would have been every team's second goal in trying to win the grand final. But nonetheless, they've had some really good periods of play this season. I'm sure they'll be sort of working up next, sort of building in the off season and trying to have another crack at it next season. But I thought it was a good season nonetheless for Queanbeyan, and commiserations to them. Congratulations to the Brindis, though. We mentioned in the last few weeks how well they've done this season. They, like I mentioned, they had really good spells of play here. Very impressed with some of their play here. And they defended quite well considering that oncoming pressure for Queanbeyan. In the end, they weren't able to hurl that penalty out, but they defended quite well with the Queanbeyan pressure at the end. They have now set up a Southside derby, Tuggeranong derby. Webby might have another name for it, for the grand final next weekend. Webby, another dramatic semi-final here. What did you make of it?
Just a fantastic game, and like you said, a very interesting result. It was it had everything. I think that game. Look, to be honest, I think Brindy were probably slightly the better team over the 90 at least, and would have felt extremely hard done by the penalty and to concede that in the 96th minute. But on the other side, Queanbeyan really would have thought, yep, we've finally got it. We've got this we're gonna take this. So it's such a hard mental barrier to get over for Brindabella's perspective, to concede so late in a game. So to pick themselves up and then get through extra time. They were a man up. As you said, Michael Mensah was sent off, but I'm pretty sure it was early into extra time. A Brindy player got injured and they had used all their subs, so they had their emergency sub that you're allowed, and they had to bring on their goalkeeper on the field. So, they were doing it tough as well as Queanbeyan, but it just shows what a fantastic kind of spirit that group has. Look, they've been really good all year. It's funny, somebody showed me a prediction that I did at the start of the year. It wasn't probably on this podcast, but I picked the top four, and I had ANU, Queanbeyan, Tuggeranong, and Brindabella.
I think you might have done that here as well. You did.
But to be perfectly honest, I would have tipped against them this week. I would have tipped against them last week. And they've proven me wrong both times. So I think Ray would be happy if I tipped against them for the final, because they'll probably seal their win. So, look, they have been very impressive. I talk about it every time I get on. I just think Jordan Host is an exceptional player. He's really been one of the only big additions to the team this year, but he's just been, so instrumental for them. Obviously, having Curtis Schaefer back has been helpful for him. I really think that they start with their defence. I think their defence has been extremely impressive all year. They remind me a lot of Tuggeranong's defence. Young, very good ball playing, strong. They start a lot of their attacks from their defence. So look very, very impressive. To come from last year to make a grand final, it's an amazing turnaround. And something that Ray really should be extremely proud. Queanbeyan, on the other hand, look, things just didn't go well. Big ups and downs in this competition. Tuggeranong's really been the only consistent side, but they started off so well. They had this huge slump in the middle, and at one point it looked like they might not make the top four. Then they had a really good end to the season to pip ANU's second spot. But the final series was definitely one to forget for them. From last week's, 5-0 loss to Tuggeranong, something that they really, really didn't want. But then to go out straight sets from that, first top two position, it's tough. So, look, definitely something for them to build on next year. It's definitely a younger looking Queanbeyan side. So, I think onwards and upwards for them. But looking forward to next week.
Absolutely. And I just want to say congratulations to Brindabella. They've sort of really thrived in that underdog sort of scenario or role per se. They've done really well, and now they obviously find themselves in this weekend's final. So they will take on Tuggeranong United. It will be Tuggeranong United versus Brindabella Blues, Sunday, October 2nd, 2:30 p.m. at Riverside. And in terms of results from past encounters between these two heading into the final from this season, they've played 3 times, with Tuggeranong winning the first match 4-0, winning the second match in round 12, 3-0. The first match was in round 5, and then round 19 was a 1-1 draw. Webby, what are your thoughts on the final between these two sides? Obviously, we're not really too surprised that Tuggeranong have made it into the final. Like you said, they've been the most consistent side all season, but they're coming up against a Brindabella Blues team that will go in there with, a feeling of just having nothing to lose, because they've been counted out in, both of the games that they've already played in finals this season, and they've come out on top both times. So why not sort of make a hat trick of it?
Yeah, look, I think these two teams match up quite well. They're very similar, both quite young, and both very well coached. They both have a lot of firepower. As I said, they're very similar defensively, big and strong at the back, and kind of can play out quickly from the back, can set up play through the midfield, but also can kind of skip the lines and go direct. Ollie Wertson's very good at hitting a good 50, 60 metre ball straight to the strikers. Harrison Bunell is one of the best I've seen in Canberra at hitting that 50, 60 metre ball from centre backs to the strikers. So they do have a lot of arsenals in both teams in their lockers. So it promises to be a really good game. As you said, Tuggeranong have probably had the wood over them, but Rindy have managed to hold them in one game. And I think that give them a lot of hope that they can match it with them. As you said, they've come into the last 2 games probably with nothing to lose, and everyone's against us. No one's giving us any hope, and they can just go and play absolute risk-free kind of football. Getting into a grand final is a little bit different, and while you want to think like that, when you step out on that field on grand final day, the pressure gets to a lot of people, especially these young guys. Look, hopefully it doesn't, and hopefully they can go, look, we've got nothing to lose, just like the 2 games before this. But I think that the pressure will be there. I kind of feel, and I might be wrong, Tuggeranong, on the other hand, probably have a little bit less pressure because they wanted promotion. They got promotion. I think this is just a bonus for them. And so, that Tuggeranong team without pressure, is a very, very dangerous team because they can play some fantastic free-flowing football. So if they kind of play with all the constraints off, then it should be a really good game.
It certainly should. Webby, thanks for joining us this week. We'll, of course, see you next weekend. Next Monday anyway, to review the final and the season as well. Webby, any last words before we head off?
Good luck to both the teams. Again, I hope I haven't cursed anyone. I'm sure Mitch will let me know if I have. But yeah, look, I just hope it's a really good game. But mainly, look, congratulations to both of them for getting there. It's a Tuggeranong. It's a tough getting relegated and picking yourself up, and it's going to be interesting to see if Belconnen can do the same next year. But Tuggeranong has shown that you can do it. But I don't think it's as easy as some people think it was for them. Like they put in a lot of work, especially this time of year, to kind of get the team ready for the next year. But then they had to do it on the field. And similarly, Brindabella as I said, from last spot, it's so easy to see a team kind of decimated when you come last. People just kind of go, well, maybe I'll go and look at greener pastures. But, they pretty much held everyone together, everyone they wanted, brought more in, and it's shown how fantastic that team's progressed. They were really just a kind of almost an under-19 team, about 3 or 4 years ago when they started. And it's been slow, but they had, and you've seen it, I've seen it hundreds of times before, where teams say, oh, look, we've got a really young team. They'll be really good in 5 years. And 5 years later, most of them have left. But they've actually really kept them on. And all of a sudden, they're in grand finals. And they can keep hold of them again and pick up a few more. They are actually real champions. As I said, it's the keeping hold of them. There are some superstars in their team, and I'm sure some NPL clubs will be sniffing around. Or even some of the kind of higher status CPL teams. So that will be interesting to watch out for next year.
Well, it certainly will. Keep tuned to NPL TV, of course. A lot of matches this weekend compared to some other weekends. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 9 a.m. will be the reserve grade women's grand final. Under 23s grand final will be at 12 p.m. at Deakin. Straight after that on NPL TV, I'll be commentating that one with Paul Celestino. And then we've got the NPLW grand final after that at 3 p.m. at Deakin Stadium. And then after that, we've got the NPL grand final, 6 p.m. at Deakin Stadium. This is all on Saturday. And then, if I'm not mistaken, CPL final will be on NPL TV, live stream there, 2:30 p.m. at Riverside Stadium. So heaps of grand final football for everybody. Try and get down to the games if you can. Hopefully it will be really good weather. And it was this past weekend. Let's hope that continues for this final weekend. And we'll see you next weekend here on the show for the final episode of the season. Thank you very much.